Why is it that so many people feel lost, empty, or incomplete when they're alone? Today, we're going to solve that problem. I'm going to show you how being alone can become your greatest strength, and how letting go what no longer serves you will unlock a deeper happiness than you've ever known. We live in a world that has conditioned us to believe that happiness is always outside of us, waiting to be found in someone else's approval, in a relationship, in material possessions, or in the constant chase for recognition. From a young age, we are told stories that suggest our lives are incomplete unless someone else validates us, unless we achieve a certain status, unless we fit into the mold of what society calls success. This conditioning creates a dependency, a belief system where joy is always tied to something external. And when that external thing disappears or changes, we feel broken, lonely, and unworthy. But the truth is, this belief system is an illusion. The moment you understand that your sense of happiness, your sense of wholeness, cannot and should not depend on something or someone outside of you, you begin to reclaim the most powerful gift you have, your inner freedom. Detachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean cutting yourself off from love, relationships, or life. Detachment means no longer being a prisoner to circumstances. It means you are no longer at the mercy of how people treat you, or whether someone chooses to stay in your life. Detachment is freedom because it teaches you to see yourself as the source of your own peace. Think about it. How many times have you tied your sense of joy to another person? You feel alive when they're around, but empty when they're gone. You feel confident when they approve of you, but insecure when they criticize or ignore you. This back and forth dynamic robs you of your own center. It gives away your power to someone else's moods, choices, or presence. Detachment says, I am whole whether you are here or not. I am enough whether you see me or not. My happiness is not something you can give me, and therefore, it is not something you can take away. There's a quiet strength that emerges when you detach. At first, it may feel uncomfortable because the ego has been conditioned to cling, to grasp, to hold on tightly to what it thinks it needs. The ego believes that safety is found in attachment, but what actually happens is the opposite. The more you cling, the more you suffer, because nothing in this world is permanent. People leave, circumstances change, and life is always in motion. Detachment is not about rejecting this truth. It's about embracing it. When you stop resisting change and stop holding on so tightly, you begin to experience a deep sense of peace. You start to realize that you don't need everything to stay the same in order to be happy. Detachment also allows you to love more deeply. This may sound paradoxical, but it is true. When you are attached, your love is mixed with fear. Fear of losing, fear of not being enough, fear of abandonment. That fear turns love into possession, into control, into dependence. But when you detach, your love becomes pure. You can give freely without expecting in return. You can enjoy someone's presence without clinging to it, and you can release them with grace if life requires it. Detachment teaches you that love is not about ownership. It is about appreciation, about honoring the present moment for what it is. To practice detachment is to step into a new way of being. It begins by observing the moments when your happiness rises or falls depending on external circumstances. Notice how quickly your mood shifts when someone praises you versus when they criticize you. Notice how often you feel incomplete because of what is missing in your life rather than what is present. These observations are powerful because they reveal the patterns of dependency. And the moment you can see them clearly, you are no longer enslaved by them. Detachment also asks you to shift your inner dialogue. Instead of saying, "I'll be happy when someone loves me," you begin to affirm, "I am already whole, and I share my wholeness with others." Instead of saying, "I need this situation to work out for me to feel secure," you begin to affirm, "I create my own inner security regardless of what happens." This shift in language rewires the brain. It changes the emotional signals you send to your body. It transforms the way you show up in life. And soon, what once felt like loneliness transforms into solitude. What once felt like emptiness transforms into space. And what once felt like loss transforms into liberation. Detachment is not coldness. It is not distance. It is the recognition that nothing outside of you can determine your worth. It is choosing to live anchored in your own inner being rather than the shifting tides of other people's actions or the unpredictability of life. It is saying, "I am complete as I am, and I will no longer give away my power to the illusion that I need something or someone else to make me whole." When you live from this place, you no longer chase love, you radiate it. You no longer seek validation, you embody it. You no longer fear solitude, you welcome it as the ground where your strength is born. Detachment, then, becomes the gateway to true happiness, because it reveals that joy was never something you had to earn, chase, or hold on to. It was always within you, waiting to be uncovered, when you stopped clinging to what could never define you in the first place. When you are alone, the mind immediately begins to craft stories. It tells you that something is missing, that you are incomplete, that you should be somewhere else with someone else doing something else. The human mind is designed to search for patterns, to seek comfort in the familiar, and when it cannot find that comfort in the presence of others, it creates a sense of lack. This is why solitude often feels heavy and painful. It is not the absence of people that hurts, it is the narrative your mind attaches to that absence. You believe that being alone means being unloved, unwanted, or forgotten. And that belief becomes the source of suffering. Rewiring your mindset begins with interrupting this narrative. It requires awareness that the thoughts you think are not necessarily truths, but rehearsed programs you have run for years. If the mind has been conditioned to associate aloneness with emptiness, then solitude will always feel like punishment. But when you begin to consciously shift that association, to see solitude as fertile ground rather than barren land, the experience transforms. This shift is not instant. It is a practice, a gradual rewiring of neural pathways that requires repetition, awareness, and intention. Consider how often you focus on what is lacking when you are alone. You think about the relationship you don't have, the calls you didn't receive, the opportunities that slipped away. The brain is naturally wired to highlight what's missing because, for survival, it evolved to detect threats and deficiencies. But survival mode is not where joy is born. Joy requires a higher state of awareness, one that sees abundance even in stillness. To rewire your mindset, you must shift from lack-based thinking to abundance-based thinking. Instead of asking, "What am I missing right now?" begin to ask, "What is available to me in this moment?" That question alone begins to open new pathways in the brain. Neuroscience shows that where you place your attention, you place your energy. When you constantly focus on what you lack, you reinforce the neural circuits of dissatisfaction and scarcity. Those circuits grow stronger each time you repeat the thought, making loneliness feel heavier, making emptiness feel deeper. But the opposite is also true. When you train your attention toward gratitude, toward possibilities, toward presence, you reinforce new neural circuits. Over time, these circuits become stronger than the old ones, and your default state begins to shift. What once triggered feelings of isolation can start to trigger feelings of freedom. Rewiring the mind also involves embracing the silence that comes with being alone. Many people run from silence because it confronts them with their own thoughts. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, or stimulation because silence feels threatening. Yet silence is where transformation happens. When you allow yourself to sit in that quiet, without judgment, you begin to see the stories your mind is telling. You start to notice the patterns. I am not enough. I am abandoned. I am empty. Once you see these patterns, you gain the power to change them. You cannot rewire what you are not aware of. But once awareness shines a light on the story, you can choose a new one. This is where visualization and affirmation come in. When the mind wants to tell you that you are incomplete, you consciously replace it with the thought, "I am whole as I am." At first, this may feel false, because the old story has been rehearsed for so long. But just as a musician learns to play a new instrument by practicing scales over and over, your brain learns new patterns through repetition. Each time you affirm wholeness, each time you visualize yourself thriving in solitude, you strengthen the neural circuits of self-empowerment. Over time, the new story begins to feel more natural than the old one. Rewiring your mindset also means learning to view solitude as a mirror. When you are alone, the mind shows you the parts of yourself that are waiting to be healed. The loneliness is not a punishment. It is feedback. It reveals the areas where you have outsourced your worth, the parts of your identity you have handed over to others. Solitude exposes the illusions. And while that exposure can be painful, it is also the path to freedom. Once you see clearly that you have been chasing external validation, you can reclaim your energy and redirect it inward. Another layer of rewiring is shifting your relationship with time. Often, when people are alone, they think in terms of waiting. Waiting for someone to arrive, waiting for circumstances to change, waiting for life to feel complete again. This mindset creates resistance to the present moment, and resistance is the root of suffering. Instead of waiting, begin creating. Use solitude as the space to cultivate new skills, new passions, new understandings of yourself. When you shift from waiting to creating, you break the cycle of dependency on external conditions. You no longer sit in absence. You thrive in presence. It is also important to remember that emotions are chemical signals. When you repeat thoughts of lack, your body produces emotions of sadness, emptiness, and despair. Those emotions become addictive because the body grows accustomed to them. You wake up in the morning and unconsciously reach for those familiar feelings, not because they serve you, but because they are familiar. Rewiring your mindset means breaking that cycle. It means teaching your body to feel new emotions, gratitude, peace, empowerment, until those emotions become your new baseline. This is why practices like meditation, breath work, and gratitude journaling are powerful tools. They interrupt the old chemical patterns and allow you to install new ones. Rewiring is not about denying reality. It is not about pretending you don't feel pain or ignoring your emotions. It is about recognizing that your mind has a choice in how it interprets reality. The same moment of being alone can be seen as evidence of lack or as an opportunity for growth. The event does not change, but the meaning you give it does. And that meaning determines how you feel, how you act, and ultimately how you live. The more you practice this shift, the more natural it becomes. What once felt like loneliness becomes solitude. What once felt like emptiness becomes spaciousness. What once felt like abandonment becomes alignment. By rewiring your mindset, you begin to experience aloneness not as a void to be filled, but as a canvas to be painted. You discover that you were never truly lacking. You were simply perceiving through the lens of an old program. And when that lens shifts, everything changes. There is a weight many people carry that is invisible to the eye, yet heavy on the soul. It is the weight of memories, the weight of attachments, the weight of identities we refuse to release. We hold on to people who have already walked away, to opportunities that have already passed, to versions of ourselves that no longer exist. We hold them so tightly that we create tension inside, and that tension becomes suffering. Letting go is not a skill most of us are taught. In fact, society often glorifies holding on to relationships at any cost, holding on to ambitions even when they drain us, holding on to stories of who we were because we fear who we might become without them. Yet the true art of living lies not in clinging, but in releasing. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean erasing your past or pretending that certain experiences never happened. Letting go means releasing the emotional charge those experiences have over you. It is the ability to look at the past without letting it dictate your present. Imagine carrying a heavy bag filled with stones. Each stone represents an unresolved hurt, a regret, a disappointment, a person you still think about with bitterness or longing. At first, you might not notice the weight, but over time, carrying that bag everywhere you go leaves you exhausted. You cannot run freely into the future if you are shackled to the past. Letting go means putting down the bag. It means realizing you no longer need to carry it because the lessons have already been learned. So often, we confuse attachment with love. We believe that holding on tightly to someone proves our devotion, when in truth, attachment is rooted in fear. Fear of losing, fear of being alone, fear of facing ourselves. But love in its purest form is never about possession. Love does not bind, it frees. When you truly love, you can let go without resentment, without resistance, because you understand that love was never about keeping. It was about appreciating. When you cling, you are not really holding on to the person or the memory. You are holding on to the story you created around them, the belief that your happiness depends on their presence. Letting go asks you to break free from that illusion and to recognize that your joy is not tied to anything or anyone outside of you. Letting go also requires surrender. The mind craves control. It wants to know outcomes. It wants certainty. It wants to dictate how life should unfold. But life does not work according to the mind's rigid expectations. Life is fluid, ever changing, and often unpredictable. The more you try to force it to conform to your plans, the more resistance you create. Surrender is not about giving up. It is about aligning yourself with the flow of life instead of fighting against it. When you surrender, you stop trying to manipulate circumstances and allow them to unfold as they are meant to. You release the need to know every answer, and in that release, you discover peace. Consider how much of your suffering comes from replaying the past. You revisit old arguments, old betrayals, old heartbreaks, and each time you do, your body relives the same emotions. Your heart tightens, your chest feels heavy, your mind spirals into the same loops. This repetition is a form of self-imprisonment. The event itself is gone, but by reliving it, you keep yourself stuck in its grip. Letting go is choosing to break that cycle. It is telling yourself, I no longer need to suffer for something that has already ended. It is choosing to live in the present moment instead of dragging the past into it. There is also the art of letting go of who you thought you should be. Many people are trapped not by others, but by their own self-image. They cling to an identity that was built on old expectations, on the desires of others, on outdated definitions of success. And when life invites them to grow, to evolve, to shed that old self, they resist. They fear the unknown version of themselves. But the truth is, you cannot step into who you are meant to be if you refuse to release who you used to be. Letting go of your old identity is not a loss, it is a rebirth. Every season of life requires a new version of you, and to resist that evolution is to resist your own potential. The art of letting go is also about forgiveness, not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself. Self-blame, guilt, and regret are some of the heaviest weights we carry. We replay our mistakes, We punish ourselves for choices we made in moments of pain or ignorance, and we believe we must carry that punishment forever. But holding on to guilt does not undo the past. It only poisons the present. Forgiveness is the release of that poison. It is the choice to see yourself with compassion rather than condemnation. Letting go of self-blame is not excusing your actions. It is choosing to learn from them instead of being defined by them. When you master the art of letting go, you begin to see life differently. You no longer measure your worth by what you can hold on to. You no longer fear endings because you know every ending is a doorway to a new beginning. You no longer see change as loss, but as transformation. Letting go clears the space for something new to arrive. Just as a tree must shed its leaves in autumn to prepare for spring, you must release what no longer serves you to make room for the life that is waiting for you. Every time you let go of something that weighs you down, you rise a little higher. Every time you release an old attachment, you gain more freedom. And in that freedom, you discover a peace that was always there, hidden beneath the clutter of what you refused to release. The art of letting go is not about losing. It is about remembering that you are already whole, and nothing outside of you can complete you. There is a common illusion that runs deep in human consciousness: the belief that happiness, peace, and fulfillment are something we must earn, search for, or be given by someone else. From the earliest moments of life, we are conditioned to look outside of ourselves. We learn to seek approval from parents, validation from teachers, affection from friends, and love from partners. We are told in countless ways, both subtle and obvious, that we are not enough as we are, that we need someone or something to complete us. This belief becomes the seed of dependence, and dependence becomes the root of suffering. To become whole within is to awaken from this illusion, and to remember that everything you are seeking has always been within you. When you no longer depend on others for your sense of identity or worth, you reclaim a power that was never truly gone, but often forgotten. Think about how much energy is wasted when you tie your happiness to the presence or absence of another person. Your emotions rise when they approve of you, and they fall when they criticize or withdraw. Your confidence feels strong when someone desires you, but it collapses when you are rejected. This constant fluctuation creates instability because you have built your sense of self on shifting sand. Becoming whole within is the process of building your foundation on solid ground, on your own inner being, on your own essence, on the unchanging truth that you are already enough. To become whole within is not to reject relationships, love, or companionship. It is to free those connections from the heavy burden of being responsible for your completeness. When you are whole, you no longer need another person to fix you, validate you, or fill the gaps you believe exist inside you. Instead, you enter relationships as a complete being, sharing your fullness rather than seeking to fill your emptiness. This transforms the way you love, because your love is no longer mixed with desperation or fear. It becomes pure, expansive, and unconditional, You do not cling because you do not need. You simply appreciate, honor, and allow. Wholeness is not something you acquire through effort. It is something you uncover by removing the layers of conditioning that told you otherwise. It begins with awareness, awareness of the moments when you feel incomplete, awareness of the thoughts that whisper, "I am not enough," awareness of the subtle ways you outsource your happiness. When you bring light to those patterns, you begin to see that they are not truth, but learned behaviors. And what has been learned can be unlearned. Each time you shift from seeking outside to nurturing inside, you peel back another layer and come closer to your true essence. Being whole within means finding stillness in solitude. It means embracing the quiet moments when no one else is around and realizing that you are not lacking anything in those moments. Silence becomes not an enemy, but a sanctuary. You begin to enjoy your own company, to hear the rhythm of your own breath, to feel the presence of your own existence. In that space, you discover that wholeness is not about doing, achieving, or obtaining. It is about being. It is about recognizing that your value is inherent, not conditional. You are not valuable because of what you have, who you know, or what you achieve. You are valuable because you exist. That realization alone can dissolve years of self-doubt. Becoming whole within also means integrating the parts of yourself you have rejected. Many people live divided, suppressing the emotions they deem unacceptable, hiding the flaws they believe make them unworthy, denying the parts of their story they wish to erase. But wholeness cannot exist where there is division. To be whole is to embrace every aspect of yourself, the light and the shadow, the strengths and the weaknesses, the past and the present. It is to look at yourself with compassion instead of judgment. When you stop fighting with yourself and start embracing yourself, you begin to experience a deep peace. You no longer waste energy on hiding, pretending, or rejecting. You become fully present with all that you are. This integration creates inner alignment. You begin to act from a place of authenticity rather than fear. You no longer seek to prove yourself to others because you have already accepted yourself. You no longer chase after validation because you already embody it. The noise of the outside world begins to lose its power over you because you carry a stillness within that cannot be shaken. This is what it means to be whole. It is to live in harmony with yourself regardless of what is happening outside of you. Wholeness also transforms how you experience challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as evidence that something is wrong with you, you begin to see them as opportunities for growth. You no longer collapse under adversity because you do not rely on external conditions to determine your worth. You meet challenges with resilience because your sense of self is not fragile. It is rooted in your inner being. Life still brings storms, but you are no longer a fragile leaf tossed in the wind. You are the tree with roots deep enough to hold steady. When you are whole within, your relationship with love changes profoundly. You no longer chase it as if it were scarce, because you recognize that love is not something to acquire. It is something you already are. You begin to radiate love naturally, not because someone has given it to you, but because it flows from your own being. And when love flows from you, it naturally attracts others who resonate with that frequency. This is the paradox of wholeness. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you attract deeper, healthier, and more authentic connections. Becoming whole within is ultimately about shifting from dependency to sovereignty. It is about realizing that your inner world is the true source of your happiness, and nothing outside of you has the power to create or destroy it. You stop living as a seeker and start living as a creator. You stop asking, "Who will complete me?" and start declaring, "I am complete, and from this completeness, I choose how to live, how to love, and how to give." In this state, your life no longer feels like a constant chase. It becomes an expression of wholeness, an overflow of inner abundance that nothing and no one can diminish. Happiness alone is not something we stumble upon by accident, and it is not something that arrives only when the right person or circumstance appears. It is a state of being that begins when we learn to detach from the illusions of dependency, when we rewire the mind to see abundance instead of lack, when we let go of the past and its heavy chains, and when we finally realize that we are already whole within ourselves. When you stop handing over your peace to external conditions, you reclaim the power that has always been yours. Solitude no longer feels like emptiness, but like a sacred space where transformation unfolds. The silence you once feared becomes the teacher that reveals your true strength. In that space, you no longer look outward in desperation. You look inward with awareness, and you discover that everything you once sought has been within you all along. The art of happiness alone is not about isolation. It is about liberation. It is about breaking free from the stories that tell you that you are incomplete, that your value depends on others, that your joy is something fragile. When you embody detachment, when you reprogram your inner world, when you release what no longer serves you, and when you embrace your wholeness, you step into a dimension of freedom where happiness is not something you chase. It is who you are.